Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Travis Ketchum with us. Travis, thanks for coming on the program.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a fun discussion about contests today because you're the founder of Contest Domination. So let's start with that. What is Contest Domination?
It's what we think is the most powerful and easy to use contest platform that helps small businesses use contests to generate more qualified leads.
All right, well, that sounds like something we all want. So what made you feel the need to start this? Was it, something you wanted to use yourself? Was it something you needed? Was it just you saw an opening in the market? How did you become the guy that created this platform?
Sure. So the whole initiative of, the fire of why did I want to go create something was just because I simply wanted more leads myself. And I knew that just looking at the overall buzz and engagement from everyone else, the contests were really effective at generating interest. But when I went and actually researched all the tools, none of them really seemed to have this focus on leads. A lot of them had a focus on social followings, which is good for social proof. But given my kind of like JV and performance marketing background, the money's in the list, right? So I wanted something that really had a focus on leads, and that the social aspect was just grease to get you more leads. And so all the points were winning for leads. Things were just had this like intense focus on building a marketable email list. And since there was no solution out there, I decided it might as well be me.
There you go. So walk us through the logistics of how someone actually sets up a contest, and tell us as you do it about maybe some of the features you guys have. Because like you said, you think is the easiest way, but you think you have a feature set that's unique and different than what you saw out there. So walk us through your product for a moment.
Sure. So since we're a hosted like software as a service, you don't have to know any code. So you literally just set up your account, and then we ask you for the variables that we need, like title, description, maybe if you want to embed a YouTube video, you don't even have to do embed code. You just literally grab the link out of the URL. We make a nice responsive container. You check a box to make it autoplay. You do an API integration with whoever your autoresponder is, which is as simple as clicking connect, logging in, and then picking which list to go to. So there's not even form code to mess with. But the general way that someone sets up their contest is they give us the information about what the contest should be for, how long it's going to be run, where the leads go, and then they can customize things like an email referral invite, which is a new feature we can talk about later that it's really killing it. Mm-hmm. And then they can also customize what their preloaded tweets look like, Facebook messages, what they want to encourage people to like and follow after they've already captured the lead, and then click publish. And then as far as getting it into Facebook, they just click install into Facebook, and we take care of all the SSL. We give you a mobile-friendly link for Facebook, which is pretty big since Facebook apps don't technically work on mobile. An average customer, assuming if they have graphics ready, if that's something that they need for the template they chose, it usually only takes about 10 or 15 minutes from the time you set up your account to the time you can get your first lead.
Perfect. And you have to have a Facebook page for your business to run the contest?
You actually don't. So a lot of contest apps are either solely outside of Facebook's walled garden or solely inside Facebook's walled garden.
Okay.
And we actually give you a hosted page, and we consider Facebook to be one kind of lead source. And so it's easy to install it into Facebook, but then you also have your own dedicated page outside of the Facebook garden that you can use for any of your other lead sources you want. So it doesn't have to run through Facebook. Some people prefer to run all their campaign traffic through there, but it's a choice you have, whereas most applications you don't. It's either all or nothing, and we try to blend that so you have both.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let's talk about contests for a moment from kind of a marketing perspective. You would know this as well as anybody. Are consumers put off by contests, or do they actually enjoy them? Because it's hard because, I'm an entrepreneur, type A, choleric personality. I don't have time for games a lot of time. But I know that may not be the way that general consumers actually feel about things. So how do they view contests?
Well, it's important to note that any marketing initiative anywhere is not going to appeal to everyone. However, that being said, we've noticed, and this is true of really almost any niche that's tried doing it, is that most of your audience loves contests. Because it's engaging, and everyone loves the chance to win, whether they're like gamblers or not. Everyone gets a little bit of a kind of temporary high by entering a contest. and if it's a really cool prize, it can really actually greatly improve their perception of you or your brand, with the fact that you're giving back to the community. So it's this big kind of ball of, I can maybe win something. I have more respect for the brand and person that's doing it, and it's actually kind of fun. And the fact that when they get their friends to enter, they get the notifications of earning more entries. It's a little bit gamified, but it's not to the point where, I don't play Facebook games, and you just said you don't either. I hate that. But, if you have this kind of idea of winning, and you can see the immediate rewards of, being exponentially rewarded, most consumers like that, even if they're not gamers. So it has a pretty broad appeal for almost any niche.
Yeah.
And they seem to have a really high tolerance for contests more frequently than other marketing initiatives. Of course, with anything, there's a limit, but they seem to be more apt to engaging with contests than almost any other marketing channel, at least right now.
Yeah, no, it's good to know. Now, you mentioned earlier the primary goal is to build the list. The money's in the list, and that's what you're trying to really grow. And just to make sure we're clear, we're talking about email lists there, right?
Correct.
Capturing email addresses. So the ultimate goal of the contest is to capture an email, and then tell me if I'm wrong, once they input an email, then they have the ability to share socially, because that's kind of a secondary thing if it happens at all. Is that kind of the way you view it?
Yeah, so the social is there, but we do the ask for social after we've captured the lead. And the way it works, the basic version, and the way it worked kind of from the beginning up, and then we've added the email refer step. But the basic social interaction was when someone enters their name and email, they get one unconfirmed lead or one unconfirmed entry, and that becomes confirmed when they double opt into your list. Okay, so they become a marketable lead. But then for each person that they can successfully refer through a unique referral link, they get 10 additional entries.
So they really
while
can't
there's
win unless they refer.
Yeah, I mean, technically, with one confirmed entry, you can win because we have a weighted lottery picker, and that's how most of our audience picks their winners. But it's a substantial difference in your odds if you can just get one person to enter.
Yeah.
10x your chances of winning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so talk to me about do you feel like that contests are an underutilized tool for growing a startup? Because we hear about it sometimes, but it just seems like there's success stories, but I don't feel like a lot of startups really utilizing it the best they could. Is that what you feel as well, or no?
Well, let's take a look at something like LaunchRock, right, which was kind of a phenomenon when it came out, and a lot of people have tried that approach. And LaunchRock kind of takes part of the essence of why contests work, and I think contests, when done effectively, take that and pump it full of steroids, right? Because what LaunchRock did is they had scarcity mixed with real value that their audience cared about. And the thing that was really meta about LaunchRock is it was launching for a LaunchRock software, right? And so it was appealing to the startup community. But what's funny is that's why actually it doesn't translate as well for the other startups, because they're appealing to regular consumers, right? And so people who are appealing to regular consumers, they like the LaunchRock idea, but what they're really saying is they like the idea of contests. And I think they're really underutilized in the sense that it's one of the only ways, once you package up a nice offer, that you can get explosive growth of qualified leads that care about what you do and sell. And then as soon as the contest is over, hit them with a follow-up consolation prize of an instant discount, and it actually converts more leads than any other way we've seen. And so I'm just amazed that more people don't do it. I mean, even if someone doesn't use us, that's fine. Just use someone, because it's so powerful.
Yeah,
it's got to be something in your marketing mix, right? It's not the end all be all. I probably should say that because I'm a contest guy. It's not, but it's not the end all be all. But it's a very important spoke in a marketing mix, at least from what we've seen.
Yeah, just hearing you speak just now, it helped me put together the pieces in my mind of something I've done in the past, but I didn't do it to the full extent maybe I could. Is I actually used LaunchRock about a year or two ago to launch a product, and I kind of put together my own contest sort of, but it didn't really work that well. And basically what I said was on the LaunchRock page, hey, input your email address, and the more people you refer, you get to come into the product first. So it's not based on first come first serve. It's based on kind of points, but points one per referral is what I was doing. And I got almost 10,000 emails from that. But I didn't follow up with an offer afterwards. It converted, pretty well. Now I see using something like what you have with a follow up with an offer, and then it's an explicit contest. I think it could be really, really powerful. So that's great.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing with LaunchRock is they're just playing on scarcity, right? And so what they're doing is, as early adopters, people are usually really hungry for the newest, latest, and greatest, and that's the kind of the only scarcity metric that can drive the success of LaunchRock. But the problem is that honestly, most normal consumers, if you look at the bell of early adopters, mainstream and laggards, most people don't care about that factor, right? They don't care about being first. There's a reason that Apple still sells the iPhone 4S and the iPhone 4. It's because not everyone cares about having the newest, latest, and greatest. And most markets aren't dealing with early adopters, to be really honest. Yeah. And so a contest lets you kind of broaden that appeal by putting together a contest prize that's valuable to everyone in that spectrum of the bell curve, so that you can have a much wider reach. And then if you follow with a focused offer, right, that's based on what you do and sell, just like the prize, you have a huge list of people that have just raised their hand saying, I'm interested in what you do and sell. And if they don't win, it's a perfect opportunity to turn them from prospects into customers.
Yeah, and you talked about the scarcity of people getting in early, but see, that scarcity can only happen at launch. Once everybody's allowed in, you're done. Like, you use that trick, it's out of the bag, you can't redo it, you can't relaunch, but you can always have a contest even in the future. And that's something I ran into, is I could build up pent-up demand early before it launched, but I can never get that same level of pent-up demand later in the life cycle of the product and to a broader audience. So this is good. This is putting together some pieces in my mind here. This is helping me. So talk to me about some of the success stories of people or companies that have used contest domination, and whatever you can disclose, what they grew their list by, or how it helped them, or what doors it opened, anything like that.
Sure. So, we have some kind of like really interesting types of scenarios that people are using contests in. And I think they all have merit kind of in their own way, and the question mark here is, what do you find as success? So is success getting the most number of emails? Is success generating the most amount of revenue? Or is success generating the most revenue per user? Okay. And depending on where you are in your business cycle, it may be one of those three things, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've had everything from like Julep, who's a local nail parlor, actually here in Seattle, use our software, and they were giving away an iPad with their full collection of nail polish, which helped kind of gender specific as far as who it attracted. And they had over 31,000 people enter their contest.
Wow.
And they were able to follow up with an offer, because they have a monthly box service for about $25 a month, where they send a couple of nail polishes and some other stuff to primarily women, in their network. And they did an offer where, hey, you didn't win the main prize, you all 31,900 whatever of you, but you can get your first month of our box service for a penny, and then it goes into a $25 rebill, right? Uh-huh. So that was a good example, I think, considering they've run a lot of contests in the past, and they usually only had 8,000 or 9,000 people enter, and it like doubled their Twitter following, added like, something like 8,000 new likes to Facebook. It was pretty successful in terms of social proof, and relatively successful in terms of generating more rebills. On the flip side, we have people that do like local agency work, and I think their success is measured by the amount of revenue that their agency can charge for doing contests for other small local businesses.
I gotcha.
We had someone in Corvallis, Oregon, that he was kind of like running on shoestrings at like $30,000 in revenue before a contest, and inside of 12 months, he and his wife that do agency work, grew it to about 200,000. So that's a success.
Because
right?
They're charging their clients much more than the monthly fee you're charging for them to run the contest.
Yeah, it's a very easy conversation for them with clients. And then if you look like at revenue per entry, I don't know if anyone here has heard of James Wedmore, who's kind of known for YouTube marketing, but he used our service in conjunction with our GoToWebinar integration to use it as a viral webinar registration page, and that one webinar, which had like 4 times the number of people on it, generated $50,000 in sales for him off of one webinar. So there's all these different kinds of case studies. But at the end of the day, they all walked away with a big email list, a big list of people who were interested in qualified subscribers, and all essentially generated instant revenue as a result.
All right, so now we're going to get into the details of how to create a great contest like that. Because, I hear about the nail polish, I hear about the YouTube guy, and it's like, all right, like I want to imitate those results. And that's what people are thinking as they watch this. And so I want to kind of get inside your mind and have you walk us through the details of what really makes a great campaign. So let's start at kind of the high level. What kinds of companies should consider running contests? I mean, so far you've mentioned an agency and a nail polish company and a YouTube marketer. I mean, that seems very diverse. Is it just kind of anyone that has something to sell, or how do you see it? Who should be using this?
So I think any business who is B2C, business to consumer, with a little creativity, because there's some niches that are sort of boring, right? But with a little creativity, basically any business to consumer company can do very well with contests. Now, it gets much more difficult with business to business. It's not impossible, but you have to be extremely creative to package the kind of prize that only attracts the right kind of leads. And so that really kind of leads us into the first step, which is the most critical step, which is picking your prize.
Yeah.
Now, there's this knee-jerk reaction that almost everyone has to give away an iPad. And I'm sure you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Especially at like trade shows and stuff, like dropping your card, enter to win an iPad. Like that's just, come on, guys, we can get more creative than this. Because unless you're Best Buy or Newegg or an electronics retailer, an iPad does not pre-qualify the lead. An iPad brings you leads that want an iPad.
Which is everyone.
It doesn't, yeah. Your prize needs to be something either that is what you do and sell, or is highly correlated to your ideal customer profile that only they would want, right? So that you can then follow up with what you do and sell. So an iPad is terrible because there's, let's say you do yoga services, right? Does an iPad really pre-qualify someone who's interested in yoga? I'm lazy and I want an iPad, but I don't do yoga. So I could enter and I would not be a good lead for that person. Whereas if you were a yoga instructor, for instance, like, kind of off the wall, if you did, high-end yoga classes plus gear, so if you're doing intangibles with your time, right? Especially if you don't normally do one-on-one client work and you only normally do group work. If you say, hey, I never do this one-on-one time, but I want to do something special for my community, right? So it's an event, it's something unique, it's something with at least explicit value, but even higher perceived value, right? Because your time is obviously worth whatever it is, but the fact that you never do it, the perceived value is much higher.
Yeah.
And the only people who would be clicking and entering those contests are people interested in yoga, right?
Gotcha. So
and the
you're building a really
runner-up
qualified list.
Yeah. And so the runner-up prizes can be things like yoga mats or, workout gear. But if you'll notice, if you did that kind of price stack, the only people that would enter, again, would be people that are interested in what you do and sell. Yeah. And so then you can follow up with, 25% off your first group class, or, essentially do your own Groupon, but keep like 3 times the amount of profits and be able to follow up those prospects again in the future.
Yeah, you own the list. You don't own the Groupon list when it's all said and done. So what else have you learned about prizes besides that they need to be integrated with the kind of business you are? Have you learned anything about the kinds of prizes that works in terms of, should there be physical goods? Should there be digital goods? Should there be intangibles like your time? Or does it matter as long as it's integrated with your business?
So that's a great question. So I think, for a lot of people, if they're worried about time constraints or, about giving time back to their community, which I think is a mistake. But if you're in that situation, physical prizes are still great. However, experiences that you can offer your customer or intangibles absolutely rock, because those are what people really care about. Honestly, we're very social creatures. We connect with brands, we connect with people. We remember experiences. Maybe we only keep an iPhone for 2 years, but we keep photos of Cabo forever.
Yeah.
So if you can offer experiences, either with yourself, with your team, with your brand, or experiences that are highly, highly correlated to what you do and sell, you're almost always going to knock it out of the park compared to just saying, I'm giving away X. Because especially with something that's readily available, because if I can walk into any store and buy it and I know the exact price, that is worth $59.98 or whatever the price is, right? It's worth $59. But if it's something that I can't necessarily get, even if I have buku bucks, then my perceived value of that might add a couple zeros, really. And more importantly, people will act irrationally in your favor to get you new leads, to increase your chance of winning, when it's something that they feel passionate about. And honestly, there's very few products in the world that people feel that passionate about.
Yeah.
But experiences or the chance to meet someone that they idolize is a huge opportunity to get people to react the best way possible in terms of your marketing. And I don't think that's manipulative. I think it's just you're giving people what they want, and then they're reacting accordingly.
No, that's great insight on prizes. So how long should a contest run for to really maximize the effectiveness of it? Should they be shorter? Should they be longer? What have you learned there?
So the big question you have to ask yourself as a brand or a company there is how much effort are you willing to put into driving fresh traffic to a contest? Because you can run longer contests and be effective. You have to understand that your existing audience is only going to care for about this long. And after that, it's up to you to drive new cold traffic into essentially the funnel. And it's a great opportunity to convert cold leads into a warm-up sequence, especially if you're using something like Infusionsoft. You can do like tag testing and do existing leads through one channel and a warm-up sequence in another. But, more importantly, like I said, it just depends on your kind of dedication to driving new traffic. Now, for most businesses, that have a realistic budget and a realistic timeline, I typically tell them to run it for a month because that's long enough to let your audience know, remind them twice without emailing them every day, and then closing it out and giving them closure and saying, hey, this was the winner. Thank you all for participating. Because I think, at least half to 3/4 of businesses who run contests, they just want to have a very simple strategy for it. And if they honestly just have a strategy of giving back to their community like quarterly, because I think this will be one of the other questions about how often.
Yeah.
If they take a month to plan, a month to execute, and a month to follow up, a month to plan, month to execute, month to follow up, that's going to be a really great rhythm to get this nice organic growth off of whatever their existing tribe is. And every time that they mail, even if they get the same percentage growth, they're going to get more and more and more and more leads. And it's going to be a good, effective strategy with really pretty low impact as far as what they have to think of, how many ads they have. They don't have to buy necessarily any ads. They just have to get creative 4 times a year for 4 good prizes and experiences and let their audience know about it.
Yeah, no, that's
something that simple with that kind of timeline is a great way for most small businesses to do very, very well.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads into my next question. How big of an existing audience do you need? Because, a lot of small businesses or a lot of startups that watch this show, they're getting going. They don't have a huge tribe. They have maybe, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand Twitter followers. They don't have 10,000, They have a few hundred, a few thousand likes. They don't have 10,000 likes on Facebook. Their email list isn't huge. Does that really diminish the amount of returns they can expect? Or do they have to just get really creative with it?
So, I think most people, probably, especially in your audience, saw the Dropbox for Life contest that AppSumo did. Was it 2 years ago, year and a half, something like that?
Yeah.
And if you look at that, they didn't really have to spend that much in Facebook ads. But what they did is they worked more time and effort into coming up with a prize that would capture the attention of their audience. And so, honestly, we see people all the time that literally have zero. And I'm talking 0 emails, 0 Facebook, 0 Twitter, right? Nothing. Coming in completely cold. In fact, that agency, one of the agencies, like they used to work Department of Defense. They weren't allowed to have Twitter, Facebook. Like they literally had nothing, right? And so they were able to come into a market. In this case, Corvallis Local Deals was the thing they were starting up. And they literally cornered the market in a matter of just a couple of months, just a few $100s on Facebook ads, running it to a very specific contest that captured the attention of their hopeful audience.
Yeah.
And so I think for someone who's starting from absolute ground zero, spend a lot of time and energy figuring out an awesome prize that's going to give that experience. It's going to get the people to react on the right psychological triggers. And then spend just a little bit of money to seed that traffic. And you're not like going to spend $100 and then end up with 100,000 people on your list, but you're going to build that first tribe, right?
Yeah.
You're going to build that first base audience. And, once you have this offer put together, which is really what a contest is, that's also the best way, like if you find someone that's relevant, especially if you're like a tech startup, right? If you went to, any of the tech sites that have an audience, that's a great time to maybe sponsor one of their newsletters, right, with a link to your contest, right? Because it's one of the highest converting landing pages you could possibly have with this huge viral coefficient. So if you're talking user acquisition strategy, right,
Yeah.
this is your best opportunity to emotionally connect with your prospects, convert them at like unheard of conversion rates on the landing page, and have this really high viral coefficient so that every dollar you spend in advertising, when it's coupled with a contest, will be the most effective ad spend you probably ever have.
Okay, now let's break that down just a little bit to make sure I'm on the same page, because I think there's some
Okay.
really great insight there. So you have a contest, and you don't have many people in your own tribe, so you have to seed the contest somehow. And you're saying buying space in a newsletter from some other company. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, either buying a space in a newsletter, spending just a couple $100 on Facebook ads. I mean, if you're starting a business, even if you're on bootstrapping like we did, if you don't have a couple $100 to put into building your first tribe, you probably need to take a real serious look at what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
But most of us, with kind of pinching pennies, can get together a couple $100 to build that first audience.
Yeah, and if they want to go and buy an ad in the bottom of a newsletter, because you said it's a really high converting landing page if you think about it that way, because it's email. I know there's one place where you can actually buy ads in newsletters, but do you just recommend going to them, one-on-one and negotiating something? Is that how you would try to do it early on?
Sure. So I mean, there's some services, like I think you're probably referring to Newsletter Directory.
I
that came
actually
out.
haven't heard of that one. There's another one called Launch something. I can't remember the name of it.
LaunchBit.
LaunchBit. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same company.
Oh, okay.
I think they have a couple different names for the different services, but
I got
it's
you.
essentially the same thing. They keep changing, but it's a
Yeah.
Y Combinator company. Anyway, yeah, that's one service. So you can use something like the Newsletter Directory, but if you can find someone who has the audience that you need to be successful in your business, and you've done your research, you'd be surprised how receptive these people are, because they want more sponsors and advertisers for their site, especially if they're primarily content driven. And they've already done a lot of the hard work to corner the audience you need to reach. So ask them, how much does it cost? Not necessarily for a solo mailing, because that would be expensive if they even do it. But say, hey, I love your content. Your audience is great. I really want to sponsor your next newsletter that goes out. Just, your next blog post update you do, just say sponsored by, blah, 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 who happens to be giving away, blah, blah, blah. And people can go and check it out. It'll be a nice lure to capture some of that initial audience.
Yeah.
Especially considering there's kind of inferred endorsement that comes with that out of that audience. And so that's going to be relatively warm traffic, and it's going to convert even better than normal.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm actually going to try that. I seriously have. You've mentioned some of the things that really good contests have in common. They have prizes that really match the business itself. They do it quarterly. They seed the contest some way with Facebook ads or with sponsoring a newsletter. Is there anything else that kind of comes to your mind, or are those the main things that really make for a great contest?
To be honest, that's sort of all it takes, right?
Yeah.
And then just making sure that people care about it. One of the easiest ways to see if you're doing it right is to take a survey after you've done something. What did you like? What kind of contest you want to see in the future? What could we have done to, if you didn't share, what could we have done to entice you to share? Just really getting to understand your audience. But that's the same process everyone should be going through, in my opinion, anyway. This is just one of the more effective marketing channels that, just like anything else, requires follow-up, requires a little bit of research to make sure that every time you implement it, you're just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better.
Yeah. And so what's the single best contest that's ever ran on Contest Domination? It might be one of the ones you mentioned earlier in the case study, but maybe it might be something else.
The single best.
Single best.
Well, we've run thousands of contests.
Yeah.
So I only even notice, I try to stay on top, and I have a Twitter feed that shows me all the things that are being shared in real time. There was one contest that someone ran last year, and we actually just recently did a blog post about this. And he was a guy who started near zero, and he actually does local event promotion. And it took him like a year to get his first 2,000 leads. Then it took him like 3 to 4 months to get the next 2,000. And then when he really nailed the scarcity, he got his hands on some sold out tickets for a popular concert in Vegas. he got over 2,100 leads in 12 hours,
Wow.
organically with no ads.
Yeah, that's great.
So to me, like while that's not like the total largest number,
Hmm.
I think that's one of like the most awesome stories of someone who had a comparatively small audience and got a prior year's worth of effort in 12 hours
Yeah,
of qualified
that's an
prospects.
awesome story. Absolutely. Now let's talk about contest domination as a product. We'll kind of change gears here a little bit.
Okay.
How long has contest domination been open to the public now?
Sure. So that's kind of gonna have a two-part answer
All right.
because we didn't start as a hosted app. We actually started as a WordPress plugin, and
Uh,
that was a little over a year ago. I came up with the idea of how I wanted to structure the plugin about a year and a half ago. It was like around Christmas time,
hmm.
and I officially launched it I guess beta launched it kind of late March. Um, and then I did a full blown launch in April of last year,
Hmm.
and we sold like thousands of copies of the plugin. And then it kind of leveled off, and then we started getting, then the reviews started coming in, and our sales went back up. But as soon as that happened, the plugin itself was quite basic,
Hmm.
and it was just kind of more of an MVP more than anything, right? Minimum viable product.
Uh-huh.
And I just put a couple grand plus some credit card debt to get it made originally. But once we made all that back, I knew that there was a lot more intensive things we could do that'd be awesome, and that we could make it so you didn't have to touch code or even have a website.
Hmm.
And so I knew I wanted to do a hosted product. And so I coupled up with a really good SaaS developer almost immediately. And we started working on that just like a month and a half to 2 months after the initial launch.
Hmm.
And then that was the kind of the seeding of what there is today. And this version has only been out for about 8 months. And we have over 10,000 users just on this platform. And if you include the people that were on the plugin, we're over 20,000.
Yeah. And so, have you seen that having it where you don't have to have your own WordPress site, has that helped you as a company to kind of just reach a lot more new kind of people?
Hugely, hugely. So we saw kind of, I guess, several things. One is it's easier to get people because people honestly just don't want to touch code and they don't want to have to install yet another plugin.
Hmm.
And they just honestly want to kind of play around with software. And then when they realize after going through our settings in the free mode and what they can do with the paid mode, it makes it easier for them to just pay a little bit of money and then click install.
Hmm.
And when that's the only barrier left to launching it, because they don't have to download something first, right? They don't have to pay, then download, then set up, then execute.
Uh-huh.
They set up, pay, execute.
Yeah.
When we kind of flipped it on its head as a SaaS product, we found that a lot more people are willing to stick their toe in the water, right? See if it's going to be something they want, and then just pay to activate. So that's allowed us to bring in more leads with the free reg. Obviously, that converts better than a paid offer. And then we've seen that people are much more likely to come back and use it instead of just having the zip file stuck somewhere in their desktop or and never actually use it. And then now we can give kind of constant feedback and constant iteration because we can actually have more of a visibility as far as what's working for people and what's not.
Hmm.
And so that really helps guide our product development, not just based on what users tell us, but based on what users are actually doing.
Yeah.
And so that has also kind of changed the perspective of our scope.
Yeah, that's great. How did you get your initial traction? How did you get your first little bit of traffic to come even know you exist? Because you have the same problem every other product does. We have something. You had this WordPress plugin, and then after that, you had the product. How'd you let people know about it?
Sure. So originally, I just I just kind of like told my initial blog audience, which keep in mind at the time was like a couple hundred subscribers, which is why I wanted a contest
Yeah.
to grow my own list because I'd been out there building email lists for everyone else on a client basis. And it's kind of like the shoemaker's kids have no shoes.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I don't have an email list. This is embarrassing. I need to change that quickly, which was the whole kind of reason for wanting to do this product. But then once I had it, I let my first couple hundred people know. I'd never really sold anything on my blog. And boom, I had sales. I was like, that was interesting. Okay, well, that's a good test. And then, I had prior JV and affiliate relationships with people. And so I asked just 2 friends to mail for it. Boom, made my money back. Okay, that was neat. And then Have you ever heard of the Warrior Forum?
Yeah.
The kind of internet marketing community. At the time, WordPress plugins, they're still doing well there, but they were really hot a little over a year ago. And so we launched it there, and it sold really, really well. I partnered with someone to help me launch it just in that space. And so we quickly got thousands of users, that paid a much, steeply discounted price. Plus, a lot of it went to affiliates, but it helped me kind of corner my tribe, get feedback, do my first release on the iteration. And then I had a good story and audience to go and kind of keep spreading the message.
Yeah.
Once the SaaS came out, the challenge was similar but greater, because now we had higher server costs, and there was a bigger monthly kind of number we had to hit.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was all one-time sales, now it's mostly subscriptions. So we had to do something similar, and we are fortunate in the fact that our product is kind of naturally viral. So people that are demoing the product are usually in there and giving us their lead, then tweeting about it, sharing it on Facebook, inviting friends via email. That generates thousands of leads for us every month. So it's kind of naturally viral, I guess.
Yeah, well, that was the next question I was going to ask you, is where does most of your growth come from now? Where's the kind of the evergreen growth? Is it just people using contest domination and people hearing about it because they're being marketed a contest from somebody else?
That actually is a big driver for us, because as an incentive to leave powered by contest domination turned on, we let people drop in an affiliate ID, and so they all have the opportunity to earn by just leaving the powered by turned on. A lot of companies try to restrict the ability to even remove that for really high tiers, and I understand that they want the traffic because we benefit greatly from it. But as far as I'm concerned, our customers are already paying us. If we're paying us anything, you should be able to remove that. But as an incentive, we just say, hey, you can earn a commission on that. And most of our audience has been pretty receptive to that. But more importantly is people, like when they use it, because we have such a strong focus on leads, they actually do, they get results. And people get results, something that works, that gets them lots of leads quickly, that's so startlingly different, like shockingly different for them compared to every other method they've tried, where they've, in the past, maybe they've gotten 10, 50, 100 leads, and then they run a contest based on our training and tools, and they get 1,000, 2,000, 10,000. That's like mind-blowing to them. And, there's the old saying of if someone has a bad experience, they tell, 10 people. Good experience, they tell maybe 2. We found that if people have an amazing experience, they tell more people than you'd expect. So a lot of it's just kind of word of mouth and affiliates.
Yeah, walk us through the plans that you have right now. You have a free plan, and then what are the packages beyond that people actually pay you for?
Sure. So the free plan is pretty restricted, like you could imagine. We actually do allow people to pay as you go for those who run contests infrequently. We think people should be running them more frequently, but there is an audience that was buying a subscription and canceling, and so we allow people to buy on a per contest basis for $37. So run a single campaign. $37 gives you the features of Pro, which lets you connect your autoresponder, remove the powered by contest domination, install into Facebook, some of kind of the base features you'd want. Or for $30 a month, you can run unlimited contests.
Gotcha.
So that's, and the other stipulation on the Bootstrap, the single pay, is it can't be longer than 4 weeks. So if you want to run a longer campaign, or you want to run more than one campaign, if you just want to have the tool always accessible, we offer a discounted rate. And then we offer Pro Plus, which increases the number of integration points we have. So instead of just adding your autoresponder to collect the lead, and instead of just allowing you to install into Facebook, we also add things like GoToWebinar integration if you want to register the lead for a webinar, Chartbeat integration. But what's more exciting, and it's something that we haven't totally surfaced the feature yet for people, but we've been collecting the data, is this idea of channel tracking. And so what we're able to do now is actually see what the traffic and conversion is of every channel. So we can tell you exactly how well your referrals are doing from Facebook versus Twitter versus LinkedIn. And it's like with extremely high confidence, because we're not relying on referring agent. Like, Google Analytics relies a lot of times on referring agent. It's not always right. Instead, we have all these unique tokens. And so we can give you this like really granular breakdown of what channels are doing well. And then we're allowing you later in about a week the idea of campaigns. So you can create unique tokens per channel, so you know exactly which Facebook post you did performed the best, and which email announcement you did drove the most leads, and which tweets you did drove them. So you know what kind of messaging works with your audience, or what ads are converting beyond just doing a Facebook script of hey, these ads are converting. You just use a unique token, and you know with confidence exactly how well that ad is doing. So
Yeah, no, it's great to have that analytics there.
yeah, it's the high-powered analytics and the GoToWebinar integration really kind of separate that. And then for those who do client work, we have something called our agency solution, which is a full white labeling of the app. We give you multiple client dashboards. We allow you to invite unlimited account managers, so you can invite your team to help you implement and execute, or you can invite graphic designers or copywriters or specialized skills into your application as an agency, and give them either holistic access or granular access. So you can say, okay, I'm inviting you to write copy for client B. I'm going to send you an invite and then only give you access to client B's dashboard.
Okay.
So it's very fine-tuned for those who do client work. That's pretty much the gamut of what we offer right now.
Yeah, that sounds like great offerings. What percentage of people end up upgrading to a paid plan? What kind of freemium to paid conversion do you guys see there?
It's actually pretty strong. So, I've heard people like Buffer, for instance, convert like 2% from free to paid.
We actually just had Buffer on yesterday. They're at 1.9%, I think she said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't tabulated it like in the last week or so, just because we've been focusing on other features. But typically we're like between 15 and 20%. It's actually a pretty high conversion. Yeah. And I think that's just because once people get in there, they're typically already kind of excited when they're in the app, taking a look at the feature set. And the other thing too is we're looking at, and I'm sure most companies are, we look at total conversion, right? So we're not saying like, in first visit or third visit, it's like within a couple of months, usually 15 to 20% of those who set up a free account are converting into a paid account.
Yeah. Has anything surprised you about the growth of Contest Domination, kind of going through what you've been through in the last year? What's kind of shocked you about the whole process?
Yeah, so with the WordPress plugin, we had this huge spike in the beginning, and it, since it was such a huge campaign, then it dropped off, and like anything after that kind of feels like, a campaign hangover, right? And then we had these like little bumps here and there. And we first launched the hosted version, it was like kind of constant, and we get, little bumps, little bumps, little bumps. But in the last few months, last 4 or 5 months, it's been growing kind of exponentially. Now we're serving multiple hundreds of thousands of unique visitors to the landing pages for our customers, and there's a good chance that this month we might even hit 1 million uniques. And considering that it's very campaign driven, it's not like someone like Buffer or Tumblr, like typically when you add a user, right, they generate content for you for a while, right? And it's not just like it's not counted in days usually, right? It's counted in months. And for us, we're seeing these people, run a contest and they stop, right? Run a contest and they stop. So to get that exponential growth, that means our user growth is actually even steeper. And it's just really amazed me, I guess, kind of the adoption level. And as we make these micro changes to our feature set, we're just like constantly shipping new code to polish things. I've been surprised at how effective just kind of the constant compounding of feature sets not only obviously improves the product, but more than anything has, I think, been the main driver of kind of customer confidence of us to be kind of the leading platform.
Yeah.
And when they have that, I'm really like the kind of leads we get, which is I think why another factor of us converting free to paid, is that when people come in, they've already kind of been pre-sold that, hey, Contest Domination, they ship code every 24 to 48 hours, and they ship noticeable improvements, every 10 to 14 days.
Yeah.
And so coming in, it's like, wow, these people, as they go in, even before necessarily launch their first contest, they're just saying things get better and better and better and better. It's kind of like the same philosophy as, like a Chromebook. When a lot of people like to hate on it because early stage technology, but even one of the reviews from like Anantech was like saying that when they dropped it off in the lab to do some screen results and they got it back a week later, all the initial features they were mad about in their review had been fixed. They had to rewrite their review. So I feel like in a lot of ways we have some similarities there because we're not trying to like do feature blow, but we're just constantly trying to get better. And when the consumers see that, in a hosted software product where you have full control of the environment and you can ship that often, if I had to log into WordPress and I had an update every single day, that would be annoying. Yeah. But in a SaaS where it's seamless, I think that's been the most surprising kind of silent factor that's really helped stimulate our growth.
It's so good to hear you say that because just a day or two ago, somebody came on the show and they actually said, roughly the same thing, that it's 1,000 paper cuts that create this, kind of snowball effect. It's a lot of little changes, a little bit of the flow improved here, a little bit of the feature improved there, and then over time, you have a chart that's up and to the right, but there's no one single thing you can point to as the culprit, because we all want to point to one thing, when really it's just the life of your product and how it develops and matures. And so I think you're saying something, right along the lines with what I've heard before. That's great. So now to go against what I just said, is there any one thing you've done that you think has mattered the most in kind of a visible way? Now, obviously, you could take away that one thing, and as long as you're improving over time in the small ways, you're doing fine. But has there been one thing you learned, like, wow, when I did this one little growth hack, let's say, it did this, it really changed things?
I'm glad you asked that question because it was part of our iterative process, but it had, so our metrics, our customer success is equally, if not more important than our own success, right? And so because the more successful we can make our customers, generally speaking, the much more successful we become, right? Because if they're getting their mind blown even more about how well it's working, they're going to stay longer, they're going to be happier, they're going to tell more people, they're going to, we're going to be kind of solidify as the solution. And so to us, while we haven't necessarily seen the boomerang effect quite yet, I think we will, is just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we launched a new feature for customers, which is the email refer, that's totally killing it. And, while we always had the social refer before that was points for driving leads through social or by copying a link and sharing it in Instant Messenger, we added this extra step you can enable between the opt-in form and the social share page. It's an intermediary page. It's an email refer. And the way it works is people are asked to invite 3 friends, like type in 3 friends' emails, and they're given points, a small number of points per email that they type in, a bonus amount of points if they actually do all 3. And then when each of those leads convert, they get their standard 10-point performance bonus. And that one feature has been massive. Now, think about how many people you reach with social, right? It's usually like hundreds of people, or at least 100 people will see or interact with it in some way, shape, or form across all of your networks for an average user. But we're only asking for 3 people to be invited via email, but it's consistently the best performing channel for our new users. In fact, almost like overnight, most of our users are seeing 2 to 3x improvement in their total referral base.
Wow.
And the conversion rate of those invites is consistently 85, 90, 95 conversion rate. I mean, insane numbers. So even though it's certainly not the most traffic, in many cases, it's equal to or greater than all of their referrals from every other channel combined. So when you add that to the normal flow, their conversion numbers, their total referral rate explodes. I mean, now people go from 20% of their total leads being referrals to like 68% of their total leads being referral. We think that's a huge win. And if people can go around and if the consistent story can be, hey, when I run Contest Domination, I double the amount of leads I get that I can send them, I think that makes it harder for us to lose when we do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, this has been awesome, Travis. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
What's the best advice that you can give to any startup that's trying to grow? Because you've been there, you've done that, you're still in the middle of it. What advice do you want to give to fellow entrepreneurs that are trying to grow their product?
I have 2 things. One of them has been something I've always said, which is, because I'm not a developer or designer. That's also kind of a whole other side story. But get the best team you can afford and then add 20% to your budget. Like really stretch yourself to get the best talent possible
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to save you so much money in the long run, so much headache, heartache, and you will have such a better product that is even possible to scale. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's huge. Like that's number one.
Yeah.
And the second part of that is kind of a follow up of getting the best people is iterate early and often and really listen to customer feedback, but more importantly, look at customer metrics. And so you can just iterate, like we said, the mini paper cuts make a difference. Get the best team you can and push code as often as you can. And as long as you have your ears open and your eyes open, you end up with a product that can scale, that people love, and a business that's successful.
Yeah, that's great advice to end on, Travis. Again, thank you so much for coming on Growth Hacker TV.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was fun.